Hi guys, my name is Roger, and I'm a walking icicle or a snowman. Call it what you like. Now, you'll be surprised because my body temperature is 27 degrees, which is exactly the temperature I feel comfortable and good in. If it's hot outside, which is above 5 degrees for me, I don't feel good. I even pass out, and I run home faster to cool off. How did this happen, and how do I live my life? Well, watch this video and I'll tell you all about it. And in the meantime, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share the video with your friends. From the beginning, when my mother gave birth to me, I was born with a body temperature of 30 degrees. The doctors at first thought my mother warmed me with her body, rubbed me with some oils, the room was air conditioned all the time, we never had a draft in the house, and in general, my room is rarely ventilated. All in all, I had a lot of trouble. My mother thought that I would come to my senses in a couple of weeks, but when she measured my temperature, she was shocked, because it wasn't increasing, but was dropping lower and lower. I remember my childhood with a hat, a scarf, and a warm jacket in the middle of summer. While the other boys raced outside in shorts and flip-flops, I walked around in almost winter clothes. And in the winter, my mum almost swaddled me in clothes until I was 8 years old. I didn't understand what was going on because I was fine, and every time they dressed me, I resisted and tried to undress. One day, I stayed at home with my dad. My mum went out on business. It was winter. There was snow and sub-zero temperatures outside. I was playing with the cat and he ran outside, and when the door opened, I ran out after him. Dad was sitting in the bathroom as usual, and I was just getting high outside at the same time. I took off all my warm coats, my hat, and even my shoes, and I felt like I was getting high. The cat and I chased each other for about 20 minutes, and then my dazed dad ran outside and grabbed me and carried me inside and started panicking, warming me up by the fireplace, covering me with blankets, and saying that if my mum found out, she would kill him first and then me. Dad, but I'm not cold. Well, your limbs are frozen and you can't even feel them. Let me do the rubbing. Dad, I'm serious. You're as cold as a corpse, and even colder. But I'm not really cold. I feel good. And what do you think? Dad turned on the heating, and the house became hot, plus 25 probably, and I abruptly fell. I became weak, short of breath, and began to sweat. My mother came home, and I heard her yelling at my father, and she blamed me for being ill. In general, I was swaddled in warm blankets again, and I almost fainted. I barely waited for my parents to leave the room, and then I opened the window in the room, undressed, and got out of it. I began to breathe deeply, and that's when I realized what I needed was the cold. I told my parents about it the next day, and I proved my well-being visually. It wasn't until that day that they finally believed me. Dad made the house temperature 0 degrees, and I walked around in a t-shirt, shorts, barefoot, whilst eating ice cream, but my parents turned blue. I realized that they were freezing and could not live in such conditions. Then I turned on the heating myself, and when the house began to heat up, I would just open the refrigerator and sit near it for hours. That's when my dad had an idea. He brought to the yard some strange layers that resemble foil, only much denser, and then began to build something. It took a few days to build, and then he and my mother surprised me. It turned out that my dad built me one big refrigerator right in the middle of the yard, and they moved all my things in there. To be honest, it was the best gift of my entire teenage life. I enjoyed living there. In the winter, I had the door open, and the rest of the year, I turned on the air conditioner, and it froze the room. Because of my unusual lifestyle, I could not attend school, so I studied remotely. Tutors refused to work in such conditions, so more often, I studied online. Unfortunately, not all the equipment could withstand the cold, so I often had to use tablets. But that wasn't the saddest part, but the fact that I still didn't have any friends because I hardly ever left my house. This became a cause for depression. I've often asked myself, why was I born this way? Why am I not destined to be like other children, to just live a normal life, to walk, go to cafes, have picnics in the sun? After all, I was growing up, and my voluntary imprisonment tied my hands and feet. My parents were also racking their brains, but they couldn't think of anything sensible to do, and I became irritable. Son, eat at least a little. I'll bring you more ice cream or ice. I don't want anything, Mum. Just leave, please. But you have to eat. It'll be all right. You just have to figure out how. That's the thing, Mum. I either have to move to live amongst penguins or I'll be stuck here forever. No one wants to socialise with me or hug me because I'm colder than a corpse. Don't say that. But it's true, Mum. Why do I have to go through all this? I understood that it wasn't my mother's fault, but I was angry at everybody and even at myself. I had already begun to think seriously about moving to live in the coldest place in the world. And one day, the mailman's grandson, Zach, came to our house. He was interested in me, so I told him everything as it was. Then Zach asked me to go to the mountains with him. Why? I am part of an expedition. In the winter and summer, we get together with the guys from the camp and rush off to find people. Many of us can't stand the altitude, the pressure, but some guys can't stand the heat and the cold. It's even harder to work in the winter because our fingers freeze and we can't get a good grip on the rope. I think it's a job for you. At first, I thought it was nonsense. But on the other hand, what had I got to lose? I have been stuck at home all winter and summer anyway. So I said yes. It was one of my first trips away from home. Zach introduced me to his team, and I was given equipment, safety training, and we moved forward. It was a really hard hike. I wasn't even expecting it, but I felt so good. I was walking without a jacket, hat, and warm boots, at a time when these clothes made people clumsy. At one point, Zach almost went off the mountain, and I was the only one who reacted in time. I just jumped and grabbed the edge with one hand and the other to save his life. After this feat, I was invited to work more and more often, and I also came into the taste, because I had company, work, and I was also doing a noble deed. After all, a month ago I thought that I was nobody's burden. And then we got the next task, to find a kid in the woods. He had been missing for 4 hours, and his dad was just out of his mind with fear and worry. The guys and I searched for him for 3 hours straight. Everyone was tired, me too, but I really wanted to find the child as soon as possible, because if he froze and lay down, it was death. The guys made a fire for a little warmth and a snack, and I, unnoticed by them, went in search of the boy. There were drifts of snow on the ground, but I just picked it up with my bare hands and smeared myself to cool off. Along the way, I met some forest animals, but they were more afraid of me than I was of them. Finally, after 40 minutes of walking, I heard a quiet cry. "Hey, Martin, is that you? Help me! Help me! Martin, can you hear me? Call me! I'm from your daddy. He's looking for you. My name is Roger. I'm his assistant." There was a little voice coming from somewhere, and I looked up and saw the boy. He was lying in a tree, shivering from the cold, hiding upstairs from the animals. I soothed him and then climbed the tree with him. I tried to comfort him a little and asked him not to be frightened of my appearance. I was in just a t-shirt and pants. I made up a story that I worked for Santa and came to get him. The 5-year-old kid was so tired he didn't even respond. I called the guys on the radio and they were there in about 10 minutes. The boy's dad thanked me as much as he could, and my team was proud of me too. After all, he was the one who opened up new opportunities for me. Since then, I've been working in search parties, being sent to the coldest corners of the city and looking for missing people. Through this activity, I realized my direct purpose, and then I even got paid and hired as a private investigator. Anyway, it turns out there are pluses to all the minuses after all, and now I'm telling you this for a reason. If you have a particular thing, think about how it can be spent in a fun and rewarding way.
Hi everyone, I'm Kurt. As you may have noticed, I'm a guy, but I have something from a girl. This is something that will surprise you greatly and from which will arise a lot of questions. To be honest, I had a lot of them myself when I saw this thing in my own place. Well, everything in order. First, I'll tell you more about myself. I have a family with me, an older brother, in addition to my parents. My brother hasn't lived with us for a long time because he's married and has his own family, and I'm younger and still haven't got out of the nest. My brother and I are different. He is more calm, likes quiet evenings, board games with children, heart-to-heart conversations over a cup of tea, and I always loved extreme sports. I was doing sports. I was pumping my body. I had a perfect six-pack. The muscles on my arms were sticking out nicely from under my t-shirts. I was proud of my body, mainly because I am more like my father. My dad is also active, and my mother is modest and quiet. When summer comes, I will definitely be climbing mountains, swimming at speed on a scooter, sometimes racing by car. I'm a risk taker and I think life is one, so you have to live it with emotions. Once, though, my recklessness almost killed me. In the middle of the holidays, the boys and I decided to go for fun on the boats. The weather was just awesome. We invited a few girls to relax with us. One of them I really liked, and I planned to hit on her that day. In general, the guys and I drank a little alcohol. Well, from somewhere came the courage, mixed feelings of extreme with reckless. The boat on which we rode, we had rented. Everything was great from the mood to the water. At some point, when we were already pretty drunk, I asked the girl I liked to dance. Lola agreed immediately, and I realized that she had the same feelings for me. We held hands and danced to a cool slow dance, and I was happy. I looked into her eyes. She smiled at me, and I knew that now is a very important moment. She is waiting for my kiss. I leaned forward slightly and held my breath. At that moment, the boat lurched and we lost our balance. Lola started to fall down, and I caught her arm. We were very scared, and the guys were too, and the panic started. One of the guys jumped right into the ocean, but suddenly I saw that another boat was coming at us. Dude, the driver lost control and it was heading straight for us. At that moment, I saw everything in slow motion. Lola and she was in the water, I was on the boat holding her hand, and a boat was moving towards us. And then once and for all, I lost consciousness. I came to myself only in the hospital. I don't know exactly how much time passed, but when I opened my eyes, my mouth was dry, and I didn't immediately know where I was or what I was doing. My mother and brother ran up to me. They began to calm me down, saying that everything was fine. When I was a little more recovered, I turned my head and saw that my right arm was bandaged, but the real panic started when I couldn't move it. The doctor came in and see the fear in my eyes, and he calmed me down and explained that we had been in a terrible accident. You and that girl Lola, you were holding hands when the boat hit you, so you lost both your hands. You're right, and she's left. We did the surgery and sewed them back on, the doctor said, as if he were talking about dolls instead of people. I began to be indignant. How did they come? Rejected? Are we dolls or something? I became hysterical, but my parents calmed me down. It wasn't until an hour later that I finally got the message that the doctors did it for a reason, but to save our hands. I was in a state of shock and didn't want to accept this information. It's good that I blacked out and don't remember what it felt like, and most importantly, I didn't see what it was like. Only after a while did I ask how Lola was doing. She, unlike me, did not lose consciousness and watched all this and endured the pain. She was given a lot of painkillers and sedatives. She was asleep at the time. After some time, I don't know exactly how long, I was finally told the good news. You can remove the stitches and see the result. In principle, I felt my hand. Of course it hurt, but everything is better than without it at all. It was an exciting moment. When the bandages were finally removed, the room was silent. I didn't look to my right, but the silence made me tense. I looked at the doctor and the nurse, saw the confusion on their faces, and lowered my eyes. What? What did you do to her? Why is my hand so thin? Why is it painted red? I shouted, as if scalded. I didn't understand why they had so disfigured her until I heard a scream from the other ward. Lola shouted the same words. Yes, as you guessed, we were sewn on the wrong hands. The doctors made a mistake and swapped our hands. This is such trash. Lola's tantrum was worse than mine, but she's a girl. We were still a long time to calm down, until the doctors again injected us with sedatives. After the chief physician came running to us, my mother's threats that she would sue them, he promised to resolve the issue quietly and peacefully at his own expense. But for this we will have to go back to the operating table. In the meantime, you need to take some time to get your muscles a little stronger, because the operation is not a joke. A day later, Lola and I met at the hospital to look at our hands, and she couldn't hold back her tears at the sight of hers. How many things she saw and remembered for the rest of her life. This boat ride will stay in her head forever. We somehow found words of support for each other, and then we had to live a little as the doctor ordered. It was terrible and ugly and strange to see yourself in the mirror with the woman's hand, and knowing that you can control it. Lola and I only saw each other to check on our limbs to see if they were all right, but man, you don't want an enemy to go through that. Lola and I tried to hide our hands as best we could. The school year has already started long ago. It's good that we went to different schools. I wore long sleeves and a glove on my hand to hide it. The doctors did everything they could to make sure I could manage it, but I would still have it. I didn't even mind the awful seam on my forearm anymore. We went through this for about a month, carefully hiding a part of ourselves, and waited impatiently for the second operation. I wasn't even afraid of the fact that my arm would have to be amputated. I was willing to have what was rightfully mine returned to me. Still, as the doctor promised, the operation was done. Everything went well. Of course, rehabilitation, medications, pain, and the desire to destroy the hospital were also present, but this time without any mistakes. Everything went fine. I'm still in the recovery phase with Lola. It should take time. It's good that we have it. Now I plan to invite Lola to a movie, but during this time we managed to become related to each other. We got as close as others cannot do it.